I do have a good superhero question for you all today.
Okay.
And I need everyone at home to think about it as well.
Okay.
One of my favorite things about the All-Star Superman run is when Superman gives his powers to different people, to Lois, to Lex Luthor. If you got Superman's power for a day, what would you do? Very quickly.
I'd fly. I'd just fly around. I'd travel.
Okay.
Just like recreationally?
Yeah, I could go to a lot of places in a day.
That's fair.
A lot of places off my list.
I would travel for sure. I think I'd also do dangerous stuff. Like I'd want to travel, like, cause you can travel as a person, not quickly, but like I'd want to go in like a volcano. Like I'd want to go to like, you're impervious.
Yeah.
You could go to Everest.
Yeah,
like so easy.
I would casually do Everest. So
Yeah.
I'd want to do the most challenging, like the trench, the Marianas Trench. I don't know. I'm not a geologist, but like I'd want to go to like where humans can't. And then also I'd fight a little crime to see how it feels to be altruistic.
Interesting. I'm going to become an overlord. In like 10 hours. I'm going to like flex my powers, scare everyone, say, this is my thing now, and then I'll never have to do it again.
So you wanted to use your powers of manipulation recently, and now like I work. There's a through line here. Frankey.
Don't worry about
It's
that.
a devious through line.
Don't worry. I won't be expanding further. And with that, let's kick it to us at the DC Studios office. So welcome to DC Studios Showcase. I'm nerd commentator Frankey Smith.
I'm entertainment journalist Tyler Coates.
I'm out from behind the desk. Comic correspondent Coy Jandro, feeling powerful.
Well, it looks different. We're on the WB lot at DC Studios offices. And I have some fun facts. Maybe lesser famous Frank had this bungalow, Frank Sinatra. Have you guys heard of him?
Compared to you.
Compared to me,
Yeah, of course.
obviously,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
The other Francis, he spells his name wrong with an I. It's crazy. Also, I think it was Sidney Poitier.
Sidney Poitier, Barbara Streisand, Paul Newman, and Steve McQueen formed a production company in the 70s, and that office was here.
And the
First
office was
artists,
here.
yeah.
So we're on sacred ground.
And I think that's pretty fitting because Sidney Poitier was part of the inspiration for Jon Stewart, and that fittingly is now DC Studios.
Wow.
So here we are. How do y'all feel?
How do I feel? Let me tell you. I'm excited. I don't know if you guys know why we're here. You don't, because I haven't said it.
Yeah.
We know. They don't
We
know.
know.
It's a secret.
But this is a very special episode. We have prolific filmmaker James Gunn coming in today.
Right. That's right.
That is insane. He is the co-CEO of DC Studios as well with Peter Safran. Let's break down who James Gunn is. Tyler, you got all the answers.
So James is obviously the co-chief of DC Studios. He's also the writer, producer, and director of the upcoming Superman. He also created the animated series Creature Commandos, which we've talked about a lot.
I may have heard of it.
Yeah. Also, writer-director of The Suicide Squad. He created the Emmy-nominated Peacemaker, which I know you love that intro.
Yes.
And then, of course, before DC, he did the Guardians trilogy for Marvel. He also wrote for Zack Snyder to direct the remake of Dawn of the Dead back in like
2004?
early 2000s. Yeah, early aughts.
Wrote the very underappreciated Scooby-Doo.
Absolutely. And then wrote and directed Slither, the horror comedy.
I think he produced Brightburn in that same vein.
Absolutely. So yeah.
And he also did Super. He wrote Super with Rainn Wilson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
One
he
of my
did.
favorite,
Yeah.
Did work at Troma back in the day. He's also an actual ride or die comic book nerd. I remember the announcement 2 years ago in this space, and the week leading up to the announcement, kept saying, if they even reference one comic arc, I know it's in good hands. I kept thinking like one comic, and then the entire presentation was comic books. And now we're there, and it's really beautiful to see how far comics have come in 2 years and like where we're going. It's just cool to be here.
And that's what we really love as like deep comic book fans about James Gunn is that he's a full-on comic book nerd like the rest of us. You know what I mean? He's the bridge. So in the way that I'm here to translate Koi for you, I feel like James is translating for the entire world.
Right.
We're calling him the architect.
Ooh.
But today we're going to talk about all of that, the state of DC Studios. We're going to talk about his impact on culture, things that he likes.
Yeah, also how culture impacted him as a filmmaker, and yeah.
All that nerdy stuff you
All
like.
the nerdy stuff I like movies.
I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, he's a filmmaker too.
Yeah,
right?
He does other,
Yes.
too, as well.
So we're going to have to get a word if me or Koi nerd out too much. What's our break word?
Yeah, what's our, like, we're embarrassing ourselves word?
How about just you guys are embarrassing yourself?
Don't coy it up right now.
Don't coy it up.
I'm the verb?
You're the verb.
I'm at the default line. That's fair. No, you're not
That's
wrong.
the bar for
Welcome
me
to the
right
stage,
now.
Here I am,
Coy.
yeah.
You're here.
I get off behind the desk, and now I'm 5 minutes in.
It's hard up here. You have
It is.
no idea.
It is. The heat's here. Well, I feel like kryptonite would be a fun word to be a safe word.
Kryptonite?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys ready to talk to James?
Let's do it.
Well, we are here with the James Gunn. Thank you for joining us
I'm going to
today.
use my Frankey move here.
Pivot.
So, Frankey, I taught James how to drink the mugs without messing up his setup. So I'm so proud of you. This
I don't
is
think it works,
excellent.
Frankey. I think it's like a mess. I think it's like I'm trying to drink and this thing is right in the way.
Yeah, they our sound guy is the
He
buffest
can't
one
do anything
on the team,
but
so you don't want to mess it up.
he spends all his time working out instead of working on microphones that can pick you up from closer than further away than 5 inches.
But he's scary, and that's what matters. He's actually really nice. I shouldn't
He's
talk
a
about
sweetheart.
Josh like that. So before we get started, I like to loosen up everyone with a code open.
Oh, okay.
And it's always a question. So I asked these two if they had Superman's powers for an hour, what would they do with it?
You don't want to know.
I do. I was the villain. And these two were like, I would fly, I would be altruistic. And I was like, no, I'm starting a crime syndicate in that hour. And I'm like showing my power, and so everyone's scared of me and never test me again. And then I'm going to be this like overlord.
That plan's not going to work.
Why not?
Because you're flying and people are going to think that you can fly, but you're never going to fly again.
I don't ever need to fly. Maybe I don't fly.
Also, why are you outing yourself as a supervillain? I don't believe it, because the real supervillain would never say that that's what they would do.
Whoa.
Like, I may think that, but I
Then
would
you
say,
walk
And then this
I
is
would
what
say,
happens,
I'd go help Mother Teresa feed the poor.
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm a supervillain, I'm gonna lie.
Or I tell you a worse plan and I have a better plan that's secret. Yeah.
Are you claiming a bait and switch right now after saying it earnestly?
Listen, let me
Okay.
have this. Let me have this. James, you didn't give us your answer though.
I would fly around and destroy shit with my laser vision.
Just randomly?
No, I mean, I would try to find some stuff that didn't matter that much, but I'd like to blow. I'm a kid who liked to, I blew up a lot of things as a kid. You know what I mean? I burnt a lot of things.
Yeah.
I blew up a lot of things. And I still like it, making movies. My favorite thing to do in making a movie is lighting a person on fire. That's the most, that gives me,
It's your
oh,
thing.
it's terrifying. It's terrifying. I don't know if you've ever been on set when a person has lit themselves on
No,
fire.
I've never been on set.
It's scary because they might burn to death.
Yeah.
And so when the moment happens and they're like, give the thumbs up, they're done, and everybody comes in and puts them out, and they're not a skeleton. That's a triumphant moment as a film director, and that's more important to me than making good movies. Is not burning people to death.
I think that's
in front of
really good.
150 people. It's not. It's important. It's an important an underrated quality for a director is to not burn people to death.
I love that. So you wouldn't ruin any monuments or anything cool? Like, why not? Because then it would have a new legacy. Like, the only reason why we know about the Liberty Bell is because it's cracked. So like if you knocked off Lincoln's head or took his nose off or something.
Lincoln?
Like James Gunn did this.
Of all people, Lincoln.
There's so many monuments to destroy, and you're like,
Hey, going to let's fuck up Abraham Lincoln.
I
Yeah.
have to commend you because you are so active on Twitter and you never spoil anything and you're
threads.
talking.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Is it actually you on Twitter? On X?
Yes, it is. It is, but admittedly, it's not always me finding the questions. Sometimes, like my assistant Michael or somebody will send me a question, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll answer that one, and then I send
You're
it.
not reading
So
the replies all the time,
No.
all day long.
that would be so.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a joyous person making a movie about hope while being on X would not coach.
let me just check
You,
your
you
notifications.
actually like scroll through Instagram, you're looking at people, you're like seeing how excited everyone is.
No,
That's not you?
no, it's me answering.
Okay, but I'm saying like
But
do you
somebody's
look-
usually telling me, hey, there's some cool
Wow.
questions. Like these days, it used to be that I would, just sit there.
You had the time.
Yeah, I had the time, and also like I'm trying to really stop my screen time. Like that's
Yeah.
really the thing. It has nothing to do with anything other than I've really tried to cut my screen. I don't think it's good for your soul.
Wow.
And there's just too much, like life is such a big, beautiful thing with these big, beautiful people, you know, in this room, everyone's so beautiful and also coy. And there's, so it's like, you know, but no, I mean, it's like the world is beautiful and we're always in this little thing. I'm over it.
James,
it's just
I'm
so
really
bad for my
hurt because
soul.
our first interaction was you liking my video.
That was real back then. I was way more online. But no, I still like things. I still sometimes see things and like things, and people send me stuff and I like them and all that. So
I don't believe you saying it because we're here.
No, that's real. I swear.
Okay.
I never had anybody helping me with any of this stuff until just a little while ago.
Really?
Really, yeah. But I used to I'd be in the car, right, and I'd be, you know, somebody would be driving me somewhere, and I just would answer questions, boom, 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 or, you know, I'd be, you know, on an airplane. That's a big one, like.
But like between setups, is that like good catharsis for you to have like something to distract you, or do you like to stay in the zone?
I don't. Yeah, while I'm shooting, it maybe if it was really long back in the day, but for the most part, no. I would rather, you know, nap, which I do. Well, I do a lot. But I would rather be, you know, focusing on what the next shot is, you know, or, you know, hanging out and talking to people, you know, I mean, I'm going to do Peacemaker and, you know, John and I go just hang out and talk. We don't get that. We don't, you know, he lives in Florida. I live in LA. We're good friends. We don't have that much time to like hang out. So we do that on set. And that's where, you know, we get to spend quality time together, especially because I don't have time in my real life for friendship.
Oh, man.
Sad, right?
You write it beautifully in the stories of the friendship.
That's a lie. I got together with my 3 best friends last night. Yeah.
Do you guys share playlists and stuff? I've always wondered about like your sense of music feels so much a part of the visuals, like that tie-in.
Yeah.
And with the creative group you've gathered, is there like a playlist exchange? Like, how do you discover new music?
That's what I do. Well, I discover it because I'm pretty obsessive about music, and there's a little plug, I guess, for you know, I think it's called Album of the Year. Is that the name of the site?
Oh.
No. It's a
Oh, I thought
site.
you were talking about the Grammys.
And it's like they list every single new album that comes out.
Oh, okay.
And so I go on there, and it also lists like, you know, audience, you know, reviews and reviews, and gives it kind of like a Metacritic score. But there aren't that many reviews, so the scores aren't that meaningful. But I look at what's new, and then I listen to everything that's new, like that is within one of the genres I care about. And especially if it's, you know, gets a good score, then I listen to it. Not the whole album, but something. And so that I'm always kind of know what's happening and what's coming out. And I listen to music just a lot. And so my brothers also are all very fanatical about music. So we share playlists with each other. And, you know, there's always a yearly playlist. My brother Sean is incredibly knowledgeable about alternative hip hop. And so he's constantly making me lists about that stuff. My brother Brian is really good with like those old, you know, 70s nuggets and things like that. And so he sends that stuff out. So we're all into sort of different things. But I am pretty crazy about music.
Well, James, we're so excited to be here in this room, especially because 2 years ago, this is where you announced.
This is my actual office.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, this is your office?
This is my office. It's my office with Peter. Yeah, this is my actual office.
But here's where you announced Chapter 1 of the new DC universe, Gods and Monsters. Right. How do you feel 2 years in? I mean, are you?
We're really happy. I mean, since that time, we have greenlit like 5 movies now or something. So we have Penguin, obviously, the Christopher Reeve story, Creature Commandos. So those are the things that we've released. And we got Superman coming out. We got Supergirl coming out. We got Lanterns coming out. We got Peacemaker Season 2 coming out. What am I forgetting? Clayface.
Heard of that one?
That's a good one too.
We're going to talk about that.
That's
one.
really cool.
I got a lot of questions.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, I love whenever I talk to a writer, producer, director. I've talked to many. I don't think I've never talked to
Subtle
studio.
flex.
Which one did you like the least?
I mean, I can't say that. Oh, the least?
Yeah.
I can't say that. I'll tell you afterwards. Okay. Might be a friend of yours. Who knows?
They're listening right now.
Yeah, exactly. But my favorite question to ask.
Even my friends, I'll be a little gleeful that you hate.
Oh, of course you will. Of course you will. But my favorite question to ask of like any multi-hyphenate is when you're doing all these different jobs, like, and especially now that you're head of a studio too.
Yeah.
What is it like to make a decision as a producer, as a studio head, that maybe as a director, you'd be like, oh no, that's not what I would want to do? Have you had those conflicts at all?
There is a little bit of a conflict because you always have to be really aware of what is best for the studio as a whole.
Right.
And that is not always the exact same for what is best for my ego as a director.
Right.
And I always was very responsible with my films, right? So I always came in under budget. I always cared about my movies, making their money back. I was always very responsible in that way. But now I care about those things even more.
Right.
So it's really important. For instance, when we're making Superman, we're making a movie for everybody.
Right.
Whereas that was pretty true with Guardians, but every once in a while there's like this dumb thing in there that I'm like, I'm going to put that stupid thing in, even though nobody wants me to. You know? It's subtly different, but it's still basically the same. I mean, I still feel like it's always been, the only thing I can do is just make the best movie I can. And I try to do that no matter what the case. And I am responsible to whoever is putting up the money, that, we're staying under budget with every project. So those things are pretty much, it's always been part of my personality to be accountable, to be responsible, to care about, the well-being of the movie, both from an artistic standpoint and from a commercial standpoint. I haven't always succeeded from either point of view, but for the most part I have.
Well, my kind of follow-up question for that, now that you're a studio head and you're kind of on the other side of the desk than what you were on before as a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
A producer, director. Are there things that you learned in working with executives in previous projects that you're like, okay, that was great, that was bad, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the best executive I wish I could work with.
Yes. Well, I would say with executives, not so much with studio heads, because studio heads are usually pretty comfortable with they're not comfortable with their position. It can be very stressful. But I have found that a lot of executives, they need to, maybe on some level they don't believe they deserve to be there or something. And so they're trying to, they need to give their opinion. They need, even when they don't need to give their opinion. I'm always just looking for the truth and authenticity. And that means if I have thoughts about something, I say it no matter what.
Right.
Like, it doesn't always, people don't always love it. But also, if I don't have a problem or don't have an issue with something, I'm not going to search out for a reason to say something and give my 2 cents because it doesn't need to be there. I think that for me, working with executives, the people that really have something to say and they say it when they need to without couching it, without hiding it, but who also don't speak when they don't need to, that's what I, aspire to be.
But who's checking you, James, now?
Saffron. He is. I mean, he
like, who's checking James Gunn on this?
Yeah, I do. I check myself a lot. I'm a really careful person. Like when I make a film, I'm not that guy that's like, oh, I believe this is I really have to run it past other people, get opinions, get the real audience's opinions. As much as all that process is incredibly painful, I do everything I can to make sure that it's a movie that speaks to people, that works. Yeah. Because when you create a movie, especially a big spectacle film, you're creating a giant machine that's supposed to have an effect. I'm not creating a movie so that I can have something that, oh, I'm proud of this. I have to be proud of it. That's important that I'm proud of it. And and I like telling a personal story within a spectacle. I find it's incredibly effective. I think it's rare. But at the same time, you're creating this giant machine that needs to work on an audience in a specific way. And if it isn't working in certain ways, you got to go in there and tune up and chop off and chisel and figure it out until you can make it work the best it possibly can. So that is, I look at movies like that.
So we had Jim Lee here. Well, not in here, in our other studio. And I was like, not in the office that we saw. But Jim Lee told us that he's from the same hometown as you.
We figured out that we saw
cool.
Superman in the same theater opening weekend. Yeah. So it could have been the same actual theater. Jim is much older than me. Like, so much older than me. just ancient. No. He's a little bit older than me. And so we never knew each other. We weren't friends, and we didn't go to the same school or anything, but we were from, a part of West County, St. Louis, which is same general area.
It's cool. I know you can't disclose deals that you made with the Spectre. Right? So
In that theater.
we'll keep it there,
I actually had a follow-up similar to one of your questions about directing and the other side of the desk. With the lessons you've learned in directing and with your love of these characters as a fan, are there certain immutable rules or things about characters that when a director says, oh, I love that idea about that character, it pings you to want to work at them? Or do you look at things as their pitch, or do you have ideas you want for certain directors because of your style for the characters? Like chicken or egg with director versus character?
I mean, I would say all those things.
Okay.
I think that, there are certain things about certain characters that I think are immutable. There's certain things about Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, probably especially Shazam, that are very specific to those characters. That if somebody comes in and pitches me something that's totally different than that, I don't, think that they're not the right fit. But also, we're really open to, if somebody comes in with a pitch that's completely outside of what we expected, but it's great and it fits the character, then I'm like, oh, there's a bird in the hand, go with it. And then there's other projects in which I have very specific ideas about how it should go. So Batman Brave and the Bold is one of those things. It's something that we're working with a writer now. It's going really well, but I had a very specific idea about how it should go. And so we, I'm just very involved in the process of that film. So it's, everything's very different. It just depends,
That's beautifully flexible, especially considering, I like that the universe feels organic like comics. It's more like a spinner rack than it has to be on a single path.
1,000%. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the single story is the most important thing. And then that's followed by the larger overarching story. I mean, I love comic books, but sometimes they do get a little busy and crazy, and I'm like, if I fall out for a couple of months and then I'm back in, I'm like, who is that what's going, I want to be careful to still, and it's great that we have these big overarching stories in comics that, last for a long time with tons of characters. I'm really enjoying the Justice League Unlimited stuff now. It's totally fun that all these characters are on the Watchtower together, that I don't expect the, challengers of the unknown to be with Airwave. And, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So it's really fun, but at the same time, I also think that I still, want to make sure that we're telling these smaller stories that are not small, but singular.
Yeah.
And I think, both are important.
And I think the Absolute Line is doing a really good job with those immutables, but pushing the boundary on it.
Perfect
and finding a new
way.
way.
I mean, of taking these characters and what's their central concept that kind of makes them, and then let's change everything else besides that. Although I do love seeing those Peacemakers in Superman.
Incredible. That issue,
so
I was not ready for it.
I love every time I now see Peacemaker shows up a lot in comics now.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious to me.
That's
so
because
funny.
of you, though, right?
Of course.
It's absolutely.
I mean, I'm not going to be false. Not false modesty. He was first of all, I chose to put him in the Suicide Squad. And then John and I really loved working with John, and we had a great time, and we saw this character in the same way. A totally messed up individual that was, like a lot of people I didn't like. Yeah. And so being able to play with that character then in a really deep format of television where you really get to know somebody. Now season two is crazy.
Your iteration of the Vigilante was inspired.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I think it kind of goes in line with this, where I'm so used to seeing him so serious.
Yeah.
And now he's unserious and funny and a fanboy, and it was just such an interesting way.
You'd have to be a little weird to name yourself Vigilante if you're a vigilante.
False modesty. Yeah.
If my name was Director.
Yes.
Or you would have to be the best at it. The absolute best.
It's a little bit of a generic name. It's not. But I love that. I love Freddie Stroma. It is so fun to work with. He really ups the level in season 2. Season 2, we see a lot more Chris and Adrian as much as we see, Vigilante and Peacemaker. So there's a lot of fun of seeing those characters, but it's really about the relationships and, Harcourt and Peacemaker, that's a big thing. And then Danielle Adebayo keeping her friend. They are now best friends, and that's pretty cool to see.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I love the idea of working, kind of going in between mediums of television and film. I mean, very obviously visual, very similar there, but as you said, you can get really deep into a character in television in a way that you can't in film. I mean, are there certain stories that you kind of identify like, oh, this would be great for the TV space versus
definitely
cinema? Yeah.
Definitely. Frankly, you're just able to take better, bigger risks in TV than you are in film. In film, it's really hard. If you want to make a movie based on a character people don't know, it's a pretty big risk.
Right.
In TV, the DC brand plus my brand plus whomever the actor's brand, that ends up like something like Peacemaker, who was a completely unknown character. We couldn't have gone out and made a Peacemaker movie.
Right.
We could have if we made it for a lower budget, but we were able to go out and make a, piece of television. Then that was huge, even though it was a character that nobody had ever heard of. And that's the fun of coming into this job. It's to be able to continue the tradition of those what we call diamond characters, of Superman, of Batman, of Wonder Woman, these characters that Green Lantern, that everybody knows and loves, but then also to really bring up these other characters that people don't know.
What do you call them? They're not diamonds.
I don't really. I just the lesser known characters. Everybody
Rubies?
From it's turning Crypto into a character that everybody's going to know. It's turning people know Supergirl, but it's pushing her up. It's Peacemaker. It's Weasel. It's like all of these characters and being able to give them a way to shine as well, and perhaps create those diamond characters of the next generation.
I wanted to bring it back to music and your love of music. You typically build your direction over soundtracks, but this time with Superman, you did it with a score.
That's true. How
different was that for you?
Different. There's I love music. I love putting songs in movies. And there's a couple songs in Superman, but mostly it's score. And it's different. It's I get in some ways the first movie I've done that with, Yeah, because even going back to Slither and Super, they were pretty soundtrack heavy. Slither was a little different, but yeah. So it's it was different. I think there's a lot of ways in which, one of the ways I feel like that I'm able to grow as a director or an artist is to take away things that I rely on. I don't want to really call it a crutch, because it's not a crutch. It's just something that I used. And I think that like when I did Guardians. It was, I'd always, my work had always been very brash, very in your face, very, it's not that Guardians wasn't edgy, but very much about, the FU of it all, right? And with Guardians, I was like, oh, there's like a sweetness here. Like, even though there's, the craziness and the oddness, there's a sweetness to these characters. And this is about, love and being vulnerable. And so it was taking away a lot, and I learned a lot, not only about making movies and what people love, but also about myself through that process. And now it's doing it even more with Superman, taking away some of like the need to even be edgy in the first place, because Superman, it's always going to be different. Anything I do is going to be different, but it's not going to be, it isn't about that. It's not relying on that. It's not relying on the songs. It's about this pure, good, beautiful guy who is trying to get by in a world that isn't those things. And he just happens to have superpowers.
Right.
Do you think you're going to incorporate scores more in your future films and projects?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
What about you personally? Are you going to get a score for your own life?
Just like a poser follow around.
I would. Why not? You're James Gunn.
If I get enough money, that would be the first.
I saw the comic book cover of you. You look great in it. So
that's right. Yeah, very very studly in that picture. Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much for that.
I spoke to your hairdresser before we came in, and she told me that your hair is 100% natural. Your whole look. And everybody on Twitter thinks it's a wig. That's the gag. That's what everyone talks about.
Thinks my hair is a wig?
That's how luxurious it is. I know we're
that's
off
a
topic.
compliment.
It is a huge compliment. It's beautiful. It's luxurious. I cannot touch your hair, James Gunn.
That's that wig.
It is real, y'all. It is on screen.
Pull it hard. I don't care.
They're gonna be like,
come out.
Frankie. Okay, so
My hair's real.
For
All
those
the
of you,
directions I saw this
for
going.
those of you who are listening to the podcast and
not
are
watching,
watching us
yeah.
live, which is crazy, so you haven't seen me grab.
I just offered Frankie. She kind of grabbed it, but she didn't pull it.
Because
Which
and
was
then as soon as
disappointing,
I get off this set, they're like, "So,
I want
Frankie,
to show
can
that
we
my
talk
hair
to
is
you?"
real.
We were at such a sweet moment of like growth and
Yeah,
directing
and
and
I'm
moving
like,
crutches,
is-
Superman, and then
Do you wear wigs?
the Bilbo.
I thought I heard every rumor about myself. I've never heard that I wore a wig.
I'm chronically online, James, so I can bring you all the tea. I will bring you all the tea.
I don't need the tea.
You need the tea.
That's why I'm not chronically online.
I love that.
You
I
can't get
love
enough.
your look.
I
though.
get tea by osmosis. Like,
We'll bring it to you. No, but honestly, it's iconic. I was telling the crew earlier that like you can draw you and not put your face on it. Like you put your hair and your glasses. If I
Yeah.
drew a face,
I'm a
and everybody
cartoon.
would be like, "That's James Gunn," and that's incredible to be that iconic. Yeah, you're like,
What is one
that's not a question, Frankie.
You're like, I know, I'm giving you a compliment after I said
Well,
you may
thank you.
have
Thank
a
you very
wig.
much. I am iconic. Thank you.
That was an assist for me. Did you always envision yourself as an icon of cinema?
What the fuck?
I'm gonna ask a Superman question.
You're like, let's go to Superman.
But no, I am curious. We talk about obviously the comics influence on your work that you do, but I'm very curious. Like, as a filmmaker, was there a moment like as a kid that you saw a movie and you're like, oh, I want to make that?
Yeah, I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark in a way. I mean, it was Steven and like just being aware that like, oh, this guy was, both him and Lucas on that movie. This guy was involved in these other movies and like this, I was very young and kind of starting to understand what a director did.
Right.
But I also remember thinking, like, I remember seeing pictures of like directors in cranes above, hundreds of extras and being like, I could never do that.
Right.
Like there are two things. I remember thinking that. I remember thinking I could never write a novel.
Right.
Like, and I've written a novel and I've done, made movies and it's like, but it seemed impossible.
Right.
Really seemed impossible. And also, like, I'm from Manchester, Missouri, right? I never knew anyone. Like, I would be pretty excited if I met a morning DJ somewhere. Like that would have blown my mind. That would be a huge brush with fame. One time I saw, when I was a real little kid, I saw Danny Kaye. If anybody, you guys know who Danny Kaye is.
I'm the one who knows who Danny
Okay.
is. Yeah.
I know because my mom.
I saw Danny Kaye is an older man crossing with a bunch of bodyguards and sunglasses on the upper level of the airport that I was in. And that was nuts.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I knew who Danny Kaye was.
Right.
But like it was obviously a star.
Yeah.
That was like seeing a god. So the idea of me being involved in the entertainment industry in any real way, it wasn't very realistic. It was truly felt like a pipe dream. Like
When did
I
it
really
feel-
hoped I could write comic books.
When did it feel real to you? Did it take like a couple projects then before you're like, okay?
Oh no! Once I started making movies, I'm like, this was
Yeah, all right, fair.
like I'm in my first movie. I'm like, I think I can do this well. Like I think I'm good at this. I felt really at home on a set. I mean, I had a strange experience where I came into a movie that I had never written a screenplay, didn't use a proper format, was hired for $150 to write my first movie, kind of, took over some of it and, it was just like a natural fit. I knew a lot about movies. I had made a lot of short films. So it wasn't like I came into it without knowing anything about cinema, but it wasn't what I thought I was going to do. This is my backup job.
Right.
This is my plan B.
And plan A was
Singing in a rock and roll band.
Whoa.
okay. Well,
Do you want to do something for us right now?
I do not.
Okay.
Before we get to individual projects, I know you have a question.
But you can
about
go
that.
listen to, you can listen to my old band online, the Icons, anytime.
Really?
My buddies will be really happy that they have 1,500 plays on there.
right.
Yeah.
What kind of music is it? I learned about ska.
It's like alternative
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the ska discovery was fun.
Yeah,
When I was
love
trying to
ska.
explain ska to Frankey because I'm a big World Inferno Friendship Society guy.
Really?
Yeah, I followed them around Boston and New England for a long time. I'm a huge World Inferno fan. The music in Creature Commandos felt like home in a very weirdly specific way.
Yeah, that's cool.
But ska was a discovery for Frankey. It was cool to go down that journey.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
I did not know about it. I just thought it sounded cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But like a 12-piece band with the lead singer, like it's something special. But before we get to the individual projects, you were talking about like edgy leading into the score and like the evolution there. And I've always loved that your projects have evolved from like a certain tonality into this found family element into, the way I'm perceiving Superman to me has always been he's got like these different families of the Daily Planet family and his family on the farm and also his Justice League family. Like he's a man of families. And since the film is a score, it feels like there's an emotional through line versus a soundtrack being an emotional through line with dialogue. Have you found in your life as you've evolved as a filmmaker going from the more in your face to then the Guardians tempering that into Superman being this very heartfelt character, has that affected your sensibilities as a person in your day-to-day life?
Hugely. I'm a much nicer person than I used to be. I am. I really am. Like I used to be kind of harsh, and and I feel sad about that. I was a punk rock kid, right? I was not. Got in fights all the time and was like just always kind of in your face. Started out making movies in the independent film, in New York during the heyday when everybody screamed at each other all the time. It was a very like angry place. Came to LA with that same attitude and everybody's like, who is this mean person? Had friendships break up early on because I was so incredibly intense about everything. And listen, I'm not that, you hear a lot of people say, well, that's the way I am. I'm just really intense. But no, it's not. I was mean. Like I could be nicer to people. I didn't need to be so, harsh all the time. And the other thing, one time a very good friend of mine, Dave, Yarovesky, who, is director, said to me, people listen to what you have to say. You don't have to yell, because I got used to being like the kid in the background that like needed to get attention and take control. Like on a movie set, when I was working for Troma, in which I'm like, to be listened to, I had to be the loudest one.
Right.
And people don't do that anymore. I can now talk at my regular, incredibly loud voice, and people listen to what I have to say. They take into consideration what I have to say. I don't have to get upset. I don't have to overly state things, and that shouldn't be a part of what we're doing as creatives. So yeah, I've changed a tremendous amount, but also I'm more vulnerable. Like I'm not ashamed of having feelings. I'm not ashamed of failing. I'm not ashamed of somebody hurting my feelings. I'm not ashamed of, being, sad about something. I'm not ashamed of feeling love and affection for people. I think that I would cover all that stuff up with dark humor for many, many years. And I still have a dark sense of humor, but it's also balanced out with this other part of me as a human being that I think has made me a better filmmaker, or at least a more approachable filmmaker. So
it's beautiful to see the arc, and I really like. I found you with Scooby-Doo, and like that's such a different journey to Guardians. But there's a through line of that humor evolving as the sensibilities do, and Superman to me always took a certain maturation of the reader. Like to me, Superman doesn't make sense until you're whole. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see the person become together. Yeah.
And I think when you see Superman, it really isn't a found family story. This Superman is about. There's an element of family. It's about his relationship. But it's about his relationship to how he perceives himself in a lot of ways, which I don't want to give away too much, but that is a lot. And his relationship to his two families that he has, his Kryptonian family and his human family that adopted him.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Superman because we want to talk about all of your upcoming projects. There's Superman, Peacemaker Season 2. We have Clayface, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and The Lantern Story.
Yes.
Is there a connective tissue between all of those projects?
I mean, they're all in the same universe. So there's that. I think what's one of the interesting things is like how Rick Flag, Frank Grillo, He's in Creature Commandos. He's kind of the protagonist.
Oh, we love
for a while.
Rick Flag.
Yellow on a pilot for a reason.
Yeah, so he's kind of a hero. Then you see him in Superman. He starts to change a little bit. He's a little bit different, and then he's pretty bad, and he's not the best guy in the world.
I feel like getting beat
Peacemaker,
to pulp by a metahuman would really change your outlook.
So
on
I think
life.
I think you see it. Like, what's great is that Frank is this just really wonderful actor. We have a fun time hanging out and working together, even though he tells me that beans are bad. I like to eat beans a lot. And Frank tells me that beans are bad for you because he only eats like meat and something else.
Man, or
like
the
what?
paleo diet.
Paleo diet, yeah.
It's whatever he eats. It's crazy. Okay. He eats only meat and mushrooms or something. I don't know what, but he tells me beans are great for you. Like they're in the blue zones. Like that. Yeah, beans. I love beans, and I'll get texts from Frank at 6:30 in the morning with some article about how beans are bad for me.
I love that he's thinking about this like offset, like 3 movies together. Just that's the through line, just like connecting all these dots.
We argue. We argue constantly. And Cena's on my side, by the way, so it's me and Cena versus. Anyway, as you can tell from this Bean story, he's a supervillain. And anyway, you get to see his character change throughout these movies, just like real people change, and that's really fun. And also the fact that he's a cartoon in one, and then Superman, which is this big, brash, outlandish story, and then the more like grounded world of Peacemaker, which is kind of like the inside of the nitty-gritty of this world with metahumans that Peacemaker is not an accepted part of.
Let's stay on the topic of Creature Commandos, which has done well. Everyone loved it. Did you expect G.I. Robot to become this like cultural icon?
No.
Yeah.
No. I think he's the favorite character.
What I want is irrelevant. My directive is all that matters.
But if you theoretically had no directive, what is it that you desire?
Someday, I'd like to be reunited and see my boys.
Your boys?
The boys of Easy Company, sir.
He's kind of cute, though, when you think about it. He's got a kind of Groot cuteness about him.
Yeah.
And he's very sweet.
People use him as an icon on their social media.
I've seen a lot of memes.
Yeah, and a lot of memes. People put like the kufi on his head. Like there are a lot of really good memes.
That's
of him.
good. Oh, that's good.
But we also love Nina.
I love Nina, too.
You killed.
Well, that's a spoiler.
They should have seen it by now.
That's right. I mean, it's fine. I love her too.
Why did they send her out instead of King Shark?
Send her out instead of King Shark?
Yeah. Why did they put her on the team? She's a sweet angel.
But Waller says it. Waller says she's the only one that's able to potentially help Flag calm down these maniacs.
Okay.
She has this calming, logical presence that the other ones don't. And Waller's correct, because the bride really chills out because of Nina, and the bride becomes a better person because of Nina, or corpse.
Do you think there's a chance? We saw Khalees in the back. Do you think there's a chance that Nina would come back?
You're just.
I'm pretty big on.
I'm slowly been edging to the end. I'm like, and so since we're here,
I saw that as your goal question.
I will say I'm pretty big on killing people and not bringing them back.
I know,
because it's like when you do it in the future. Except for robots. Robots could be killed and come back anytime.
Of course.
But when people, when you start doing that all the time, then it doesn't mean anything. Right. And I want for people to go see my shows and my movies and everything else and be like, if somebody's life is at stake, that has real stakes. That has real value. Because once you start just killing people and bringing them back all the time,
I think it's what messed up comics in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like it undermines a lot of the integrity of a certain medium. We don't want to
Exactly.
bring it to the visual medium.
Exactly.
and people expect it in the genre. I don't know if you've seen Young Justice on Max. I was
Inside
I don't
the
know
house.
if you have seen Young Justice, but they killed the Flash, the smaller Flash on there, and for 3 seasons we were waiting for him to come back. And the show itself had to tell us he's not coming back.
Yeah.
Like we were all like, okay, this is the season that Kid Flash comes back, and they're like, no,
he's not coming back.
He's dead, and we had to learn.
I'm very curious about, you talk about, obviously you're going to have a lot of these characters in different films, and Frank Grillo's character, for example. what is it like to kind of maintain or not maintain like a character's tone?
Well,
like when you see someone in Creatures of Commandos go into Superman and be a very different character when the audience expects. Do you get nervous about the audience accepting that change? Or is that part of the process of just...
I think it's part of the fun.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, like, there are certain things, like, and I was like this during, when I worked at Marvel, I was really, like, I would get scripts with Rocket in them that didn't match how, like, I understood that character was my soul, So I would, always make sure that his voice always made sense, that what he did always made sense. And I do that with the characters in DC across all the films and television shows. They got to be true to, the character, especially if it's a character that I originated on film.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like for instance, one of the fun things to me is, it is an animated show, Creature Commandos. So, Rick Flag Jr. Sr. is a little bit different. He's a little bit more grounded in Superman, but it's also a big, huge, splashy spectacle. So that's different than Peacemaker. There's actually a few characters from Superman that are in Peacemaker. And it was so wild to me to direct those actors because just the different subtle style and writing of the show is just, it is grittier. It is more grounded. It is all these things when you're filming these same characters, same actors, in a totally different type of situation and role that's much more based around character than it is around plot. There's a totally different vibe to it.
Right.
And it's fascinating. For me, watching characters change like that is just fascinating.
What is it like to kind of work with the actors on kind of different takes on the same?
Well, that was the weird thing is I didn't say anything to the actors. They had the script. They came in. There's one, big character in Superman has a big, scene in Peacemaker, and that person, came in, and I didn't say anything. It was it was different because the vibe of everything is different. The lighting is different. The shots are different. The way we shoot it is different. The dialogue, of course, is different. So it was a really fun thing to see. And that's what I want to continue to bring to the DCU as a whole, is to be able to create stories that work individually, but have these characters and, people continue from one story to the next and be able to see them in a totally different light.
Like
one of the shows I loved growing up was, you saw the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I don't know if you guys you're all probably too, but did you ever see Lou Grant, the sequel?
I never saw it, but I know of it.
So Mary Tyler Moore Show is a situation comedy.
Right, and that was like an hour-long drama.
And that was an hour-long drama, a serious, journalistic newspaper story. I mean, it seemed very serious to me. I never saw it when I was older than 5.
The contemporary version of that is And Just Like That, which is like a completely different tone than Sex and the City.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's an hour long. It's still funny, but it's kind of more of a drama.
It's way more serious.
Yeah. Yeah. So but I mean, I think that's I love that as a kid, seeing that character in 2 different places and totally different genres. That concept is always really
it's like
cool
the CW verse. I don't know if you noticed. I'm one of the biggest CW verse fans. But it's like that. Like you start off with Arrow, and then like the Flash comes on Arrow, and he starts his
but those shows. But the thing is, those shows were tonally very similar.
You think so? Like Legends of Tomorrow was very tonally different than Arrow.
It was, but also kind of tonally different. Like in the same way, Guardians is totally different from the other stuff in
Marvel. I see what you're saying. Like it's like
the difference between that and then Lou Grant and Mary Tyler Moore. Like one
different.
is a 3 camp people. There was a sound. People are laughing. There's a audience laugh. It's like if I don't know who's a character from Big. You probably watch Big Bang Theory.
Wow,
Okay.
I called Mike Pilato.
Okay, who's a character? Who's
that?
It's as if there was a deadly serious.
Okay.
If the one of the people, I don't know who those people are.
Oh, it's like have
if
you ever
Kaylee
seen
Cuoco's character went and she was like in a gritty
Yes.
drama.
Yeah.
Or you've seen Kevin can F
if like
themselves?
Kaylee
like
Cuoco's
that,
character went on to do
Penguin.
Law and Order SVU, like she becomes the new detective from her.
Streets of Pasadena.
It's like totally different.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I was saying Kevin can F himself. It's a show where like it starts off
parody,
and then they say, okay, I got it.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
it. But you were talking about Superman. We have so many questions about Superman.
Okay.
The biggest one is how did you decide
What
which
happens
story.
at the end?
Yes, that.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. What is the ending of the Superman film? Oh, I thought you were going to tell us.
Oh, totally. That's
Why
what's
did
going to
you
happen
bring it
here.
up? You press the party button and you turn off the party button? Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I think Superman's one of the hardest characters to crack. I think Superman, like I said, like there's a wholeness.
Well,
I
you
think-
said we had a conversation
Which
at
we
a party
both-
years ago that I don't recall.
Yeah, like a decade back.
I think you're making it up.
I will photo evidence. Chris, we need Chris as a judge. But I think that Superman is so hard to crack, and you talked about how there was a moment that shifted for you.
I think this is really like this is, but that proves that I've been thinking about
For years.
Yeah.
And
for
that's-
years.
and I
I've
brought
been
it up
like
before
how do you do-
camera.
how do you do Superman? Like how to like.
Literally a birthday party, you and I were talking comics, and Superman was something we were both saying that he's so difficult, he's so specific. And there's a moment, a light switch, at least for me. For me, it was Superboy and Con-El. Like, my in was through Con-El,
Yeah.
and Con-El making sense made Superman make sense as I grew into the character. And then Superman, like the Tim Sale art, like I suddenly got the Americana.
Yes.
And then as I evolved into the John Byrne stuff, I got how he was more human. And
Yes.
then for me, it's always been a progression
Yeah.
of as I get older, I find new inlays to the character, and
Yeah.
he gets more colorful, he gets
Yeah.
more vibrant. And I know you mentioned your father and stuff that made you go, this is something that I'm in now. So I'd love to know, without spoilers for the film, what was your eureka moment where you felt connected enough that you wanted the responsibility of that cape?
It was the tone of All Star Superman, not the story, because we're not adaptation. We're not adapting All Star Superman, but the tone of All Star Superman. That sort of, jerky Lex in the the vain jerky Lex, and then the Superman that's really like just as good jaw forward, like big bulky guy.
Yeah.
And then the wild, 50s science fiction taken in a slightly dark, way. I mean, that to me was like, oh, that if we could do that in a movie, that would be wild. And so that was part of it. But for me, like, I couldn't crack the story. And I mean, I've talked about this a little bit until my stupid dog that I got, I mean, this is totally true. I mean, it's like I was working. I knew I was going to try to write Superman. This was before I even had the job at DC. I decided to finally tackle it because I was offered Superman back before Suicide Squad, but I took Suicide Squad instead because I was scared. And so I finally decided, okay, I'm going to try it. Peter and I talked about it. He was going to produce. I was going to direct. And I started trying to play with all these ideas. And it was hard, back, read a lot of the comics, so many great comics. I mean, and then great individual comics from the John Byrne period, from the New 52 period. Superman in blue jeans and running around. It's so cool. But it wasn't until I got so stupid. I got my dog. So I adopted this dog. He was raised in a backyard with 60 other dogs, and he was in a hoarding situation. He didn't know human beings at all. I went to the rescue place to look at the dogs, and he was just sitting in literally a pile of dogs. He didn't want anything to do with me, but I thought he looked funny because of the ear. And so I guess the part of me that likes funny dogs was like, I want the one with the stupid ear because his one ear sticks up like this. And I brought him home. He wouldn't let my wife or I touch him. He spent all the time with our other dog, who he just was connected to. And then he proceeded to ruin everything in my house. He destroyed all of my furniture. Every time there was any sort of thing that was vaguely an animal on TV, he would attack something in the room and tear it apart, like an anger, like attack a pillow because there's a hyena on film. He destroyed my laptop. He'd just shoot up my laptop. He'd shoot up all my shoes. And whenever I walked around the house barefoot, which I am always barefoot in my house, he would bite my feet as hard as he could. And I would have to be like, and I'd be on a phone with somebody and I pace while I'm on the phone. And it's like, I can't scream because I'm on the phone, so I'd have to get up on my kitchen counter and like cross my legs so that my dog couldn't get to him. And then all of a sudden I'd look over and there he is, flying up and then tacking my feet. Like, and I couldn't tell whether it was because he hated me or what. And I'm like, oh, what if that dog had superpowers? We'd all be
Yeah.
This is the one.
Put a cape on that thing.
And I was like, boom.
Wow, fascinating.
That's where it came from.
I have to ask, when I saw your message talking about crypto, you said it in such a sweet way. Like, this is a sweet dog. He like brought humanity to me, and I'm like, so much better, man. And I'm like, we won't see anything bad happen to this dog.
Yeah, I was just trying to get people to adopt dogs.
No,
My dog is terrible. No, he's actually so much better than he used to be. He's turned into a baby. Like like I said, he wouldn't let us touch him. He wouldn't let other people touch him. But now it's like he's just constantly.
He's like you. He realized he didn't have to fight everyone's
That is right. That is true. And
Evolution through the
he wants, and he just wants to be cradled. So he comes and he like jumps into is always wanting to be held like a baby.
That Supergirl comic, I maintain, is one of the best DC comics. No disrespect to every other comic, but One of Tomorrow is so easily accessible and so readable. But the cast, I love that's being assembled. Like, Mateus Schoenaerts, I think, is inspired. I really, really love the young dog.
Dude, wait till you see how scary he is in the movie.
Because Krem is such a great villain.
He's so, oh my
he's
God.
Soft, man. I always thought Krem was a softie. He got beat by a little girl.
Craig.
Ruthie, man. Ruthie.
No, Craig has amped that character up. He's so scary and creepy. It's so cool. Like, it's really cool.
And the thing I'm curious about, because it's now like, what Lobo represents to me is so fascinating. And I feel like Jason Momoa as Lobo is probably the single most like, well, that's casting. Like, he is Lobo to me.
Jason Momoa was truly one of the first messages I got. I think that when I got the job, there was a message from Jason immediately came in. Not when I got the job, when it was announced that I got the job. It was a message immediately. It was Jason Momoa texting me saying, just all caps, Lobo baby, a billion exclamation points.
He's like, you know what to do.
Just the most Lobo text one could send.
What a flex,
and then the next one was Ryan Reynolds, and he's like, this is true. Congrats, man. That's awesome. Whatever. That's cool. And I said, want to be Green Lantern again? And it's like, fuck off.
So my follow-up about Lobo was the original draft apparently Tom King did of the story was Lobo involved in that.
Yeah.
Is there an amalgamation of that original? Like, what are you doing to incorporate Lobo without telling about the movie? Like, have you taken notes from Tom? Because I know he's working with you on Lanterns. Is there an incorporation of some of the original draft ideas of how Lobo's involved?
Tom works with me on I give Tom everything to read.
Oh, amazing.
So Tom read Creature Commandos. Tom read the second season of Peacemaker. Tom read, Superman a lot. Tom, so Tom he's one of the guys I trust, that we talk about, possible things. He's also a good comic book. He knows what pisses off comic book people because they get pissed off over certain things. But like the truth is that Woman of Tomorrow in the comics is very much, it's a bunch of little stories. And we needed to create one through line, one 3-act, story, more traditional story. And so Lobo helps us to do that. It's not an amalgamation of him and Krem.
Okay.
He's a totally separate character. He's himself. I love Lobo. I always thought it was a great character to adapt. I think he's maybe in some ways the biggest comic book character that's never been in a film. So I think it was a cool thing to do. Yeah.
So talk to us about the choice to cast Millie.
Millie was just talking to Peter Safran about this. Again, before we were ever hired and we were talking about it and going through ideas, I was like, Peter, you got to read this, Woman of Tomorrow. It was like, I think right when it came out. I'm like, it's really good. Listen, I love all the times. Strange Adventures is probably my favorite. I love the Mr. Miracle stuff. I love the Human Target. I mean, he's just had all these little great comic series. I like the Black Canary stuff now. I can't wait to see what happens next week.
His Jenny Sparks is great.
Yeah, Jenny Sparks. And so anyway, I'm like, this is great. And he's like, well, who would you see as Supergirl? I said, you see the House of the Dragon? Who's that little blonde girl on that? Like, because I wanted her to be this little, pixie-ish, but very attitudinal, like, character. And so she was the first person I brought up. And then when we got her tape, I was like, oh, she's pretty good.
I kind of like the idea because, again, reading the comic, like, she is very big and powerful.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea of her being kind of like a spunky little
we
rascal.
It's Cap, right? That's the whole thing. Ruthie is the one who's telling the story.
Yeah.
And so to Ruthie, she's huge.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know what's a lie, what's not a lie.
Yeah.
And I love like getting that perspective where we're looking at the story as it is.
Well, it was hard. One of the things casting Ruthie that was a little difficult is we had to cast somebody who was looked smaller than Millie.
Right.
Millie's pretty small.
Word.
And you have these 12-year-olds who come in and Millie's like, okay. But she's amazing on the movie. And Craig is just such a joy to work with. Like, listen, I love I, Tonya. It's one of my favorite movies of the past few years. And I was really excited to get to work with him. And he's been just a dream in terms of collaborating, fighting for his ground. You find sometimes when you're in this position that people either just back down too much or they, fight against everything without thinking. And he's just he's like what I was like when I was at, other studios. You listen and you incorporate, you think about everything, you consider everything. But then, when you have an idea that you believe in, you really fight for it. And he's been that all the way through. And just the stuff he's getting is tremendous.
His filmography feels very similarly like a culmination leading to this, like Corella's visual design, Dumb Money's sensibilities. Like it feels like all roads led to Woman of Tomorrow. And I really like the directing choices, feeling like you can get a sense of tone if you know the comic. I feel like comic fans have a little cheat sheet.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Now you also have the Lanterns coming up as well.
That's
they started filming on there. What's the tone of that show?
It's a very grounded, real show. I mean, it's taking this outlandish concept of space cops with magic rings and putting it in as close to reality as it can possibly be. And, Kyle is incredible in the role. We were really lucky. Damon Lindelof was one of the very first people I met with. I'm a big fan of his stuff, and I love Chris Mundy from Ozark. And so that was kind of a dream team of those three people coming together, along with the folks at HBO, and it's kind of just been pretty smooth sailing the whole way. It's a beautiful, beautiful series, 8 episodes.
The Rebel Ridge experience felt so much like a Jon Stewart audition tape than I can ever imagine watching. Like I watched Rebel Ridge and I was like, that's Jon Stewart.
I knew Aaron already. Aaron was already at the top of my list.
Oh, amazing.
Aaron was almost Adam Warlock.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, Adam.
That would have been incredible.
Yeah.
So very short list, but the chemistry between Aaron and Kyle must be so essential, like the Hal Jordan relationship.
Totally essential. In fact, we had them read together to make sure, just like I did with Superman we did, Lois and Superman, we had a bunch of different readings, test screening, screen tests with the different Loises and Clarks to make sure that each actor was great, but also that they had this magic together. Because I have worked with actors in the past who are great individually, and then you get them together, and you're like, oh, that spark doesn't seem to be there. They could be even getting together off screen. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's there on screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hate each other off screen, but it's there on screen. And it's like casting a third actor is chemistry.
I'm a huge Mike Flanagan fan.
Me too.
So, what of his stuff? I mean, I think he's like a great adapter.
I think he's never
Stephen
done
King.
anything. I like everything he's done, and Mike and I have actually been friends for a while. And Clayface was not something that which Mike is written. Clayface was not something that we didn't come into this job like with Woman of Tomorrow or Lanterns. Woman of Tomorrow, Lanterns are both things we talked about when we had our initial writers room. We knew those things were coming. Clayface was not on our on our checklist. But Mike came in with a pitch for Clayface that was like, whoa, that is so cool. And then he wrote the the screenplay and fulfilled doubly on that promise. And the thing about Clayface that's so cool is Peter and I were like, back when we were like producing like, horror movies and Belko Experiment, all these things, I'm like, if we had gotten this script as a horror movie, not being a part of the DCU at all, it's like this amazing body horror film that we would jump at the chance of making. So it really is about like, it's just a great horror movie that is a great, smart, fun horror movie in a genre that I happen to love, which is body horror.
Are you going to make it rated R?
Yeah, it's rated R, yeah.
Oh, man. I'm trying to see if I can ask it.
It's not anything now because the MPA has to watch it.
But you know what I mean.
But it's most likely rated.
Will you tell us
pretty
the
intense.
pitch that he gave us? Would you tell us the pitch that he gave?
No.
That's why I was like,
You looked at me.
ask?
Well, because I had a thought, like, I personally, my view of Clayface is really specific to 2025. Like, I've always seen Clayface as a great commentary on AI and deepfakes and how you can betray the sensibilities.
That's it. That stuff's that's in there. Yeah,
Okay,
really,
that's what I was saying, because I
I
think he's such a 2025 character that no one considers
I
now.
always tied
Yeah.
him closer to like the substance type.
Oh, yeah,
character, like an actor who like.
Well, I mean, in terms of the body horror of it all, like it's like my first movie I ever directed was Slither, total body horror, and this is like I think what Mike's done is outdone all those things. So it's pretty.
I
cool.
think he's again like his Netflix shows. All those are such great adaptations.
Totally.
It's like really classic horror, spooky things that he really puts into. Especially House of Usher, Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes.
I thought like he put that into
for
an
sure.
incredible contemporary context.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
So we've talked for an hour, and I have not wanted to have any sort of scoops because I don't want to know anything. But I got to know, just as a fan of comic books, your thoughts on Kyle Rayner, Mr. Miracle, and my precious baby boy John Constantine. Are these characters that you just, as a fan, enjoy that we can like?
Hope to see?
Kyle, John, and who was the third one?
John
Mr.
Constantine, Mr. Miracle, Scott Free. Yeah.
Yeah. I like all three of those characters. The second two, I'm a way bigger fan. I mean, it's not that I'm not a
Kyle Rayner's
Rayner
not the
fan.
top of anyone's list, but it's my Green Lantern.
No, well, I mean, listen, I've been online enough to know that everybody has their own Green Lantern they like.
The second that you say he's not your favorite, everyone becomes huge fans.
I'm a guy. I'm a guy, right?
You're a guy. Well, you gave him that bob. What did you give him?
Oh yeah, he's got. You think his haircut in the comics is hideous?
I know, but you didn't have to adapt that to the film.
Oh, yes, I did.
So upset if I didn't.
I did.
It's
Not
that-
on that. Remember,
Yeah.
Nathan Fillion's one of my best friends. You think I'm not going to give him the ugliest haircut
How
known
did
to
he
man?
feel about that? He was like, put it on.
Oh, he's so funny. He's
Yeah.
so funny. Like, he's funny in the movie, too.
I defended
he's
it
great.
on X for you. I called it a fuck ass bob, but I said it was comic accurate.
It is
it was
very
necessary.
comic. Oh, yeah.
But I'm always curious, comic fans, for the like. Not Scott Free's not a deep cut anymore because of Tom's book, but like
That's right. Yeah,
the
I
sensibilities
love
of
that
these
character.
characters
That
so
character's
special.
great. And Constantine, I'm actually a pretty huge fan of. I was a huge. I mean, I read every Hellblazer comic as it was coming out.
The Simon Spurrier stuff right now is
is great. So he's a great character. I like that approach to magic where it wasn't so overwhelming and like, too powerful.
yeah.
Well, I love that. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you, James.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully, the first time you'll be on many more
Many times. You could be a
Believe me.
regular. This force setup
That's
is
right.
very
We'll
nice.
just take
Coy.
over the
I was gonna say we're in
office.
his. This is your chair.
See you later.
Yep, that's it. Been a pleasure, guys.
Comic correspondent. But
Know where I'm
thank
out.
you. We're so honored to have you here, for you to take the time to speak to us and be very cool.
I feel bad it took me so long. I've appreciated what you guys have done from the beginning. I told you that in person, but like I've been so crazy busy, but I knew that I had to come on a show. I didn't think it was fair not to. And so I'm
thank
really,
you.
really happy that I could be here and, experience.
Excited to see why you've been busy.
Yeah. It's pretty fun to watch, but it's also fun to be here. So
Amazing.
And you were nice to my brother. So
And I was missing your brother. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's a jerk.
Well, for those of you at home, you can check out new episodes of DC Studio Showcase every other Friday, anywhere that you can find podcasts. You can also watch it on Max, which is very cool. And you can watch it on Max's YouTube and Spotify. You can watch. Did you know you can watch things on Spotify, James?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
yeah.
dang. So it's just me. My bad. But you can also watch it on Spotify. So thank you all for joining us today for the cool, I can't call it the coolest episode ever. But it's up there. So, it's up there. Yeah, but then what about everybody else? Everybody else who came, they're going to be like, oh, what about us?
They'll understand.
They'll understand. For one of the coolest episodes ever. Thank you all. And we're back. That was an incredible episode, but the coolness does not stop. In 2 weeks, we have David Corenswet, who plays Superman, and Nicholas Hoult, who plays his adversary, Lex Luthor.
Cannot wait. Dressed realized in this moment, looking at you, David Corenswet is also DC.
Yes.
Wow.
His initials. He was born for this.
I literally it's been months. And
you said looking at me?
Yeah, because it's behind you.
Do I remind you? Am I so ungodly beautiful to you that you're like...
Correct. I was like, wow.
I do want to add this. As we mentioned, these interviews were pre-recorded. And so we did get to meet David Corenswet, who was just like Superman. He looked inhuman.
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
It was irradiating.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of crazy.
It's a big dude too. It was funny to see, like, we had so many people on set, and then he came in and was like, Superman.
Oh, Superman. Wow. We can't wait for you all to watch it, and we'll catch you all in 2 weeks.
This was an OBB sound production for Max and DC Studios, hosted by Frankey Smith, Tyler Coates, with comic correspondent Coy Jandreau. Executive producers for DC Studios, Phil Soponides and Gary Barbosa. Executive producers for DC are Mike Pallotta and Victor Diaz. The executive producer for Max is Becky Rowe, and producers for Max are Savon Slater and Margaret Kelly. The executive producers for OBB are Michael Ratner, Scott Ratner, Arlen Konopacki, and Toby Lawless. Research producer Sam Harrison. Production manager Kevin Lynn, and the studio coordinator Elijah Matias. The director of photography Heath Gresham. The first assistant camera Chris Piper. The camera operator, Ben Cohen. Gaffer, Arthur Garcia. Key grip, Sam Satoski. Key grip, Alessandro Picasso. Production designer, Francesca Maldonado. Set director, Oscar Huezo. Lead man, Camilo Castano. Sound mixer and editor, Josh Falcon. On-set mixer, Darren Bowling. Composer, Ethan Walter of The Ringers. Post-production supervisor, Mariana Crisostamo. Editor, Jesse Holland. Assistant editor, Mark Alcacid. Hair and makeup artist, Kendall Shannon. Our associate director of social for OBB, Lenore Castro. Senior coordinator social for OBB, Sharif Bukhari. Host coaching, John Luce. Talent booker, Tess Bartholomew. Production assistant, Terry Kraft. Antonio Cavallo.